But Moses and Elijah and Jesus, notice what it said, are talking. Man, I want to know what that was about. Don't you? What were they talking about? Glad to be back? I mean, I don't know. What was it? What was it? Have you tried the new burger joint? I don't know. What were we talking about? It says, while he was speaking, a bright cloud enveloped them, and the voice from the cloud said, "This is my son whom I love. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him." When the cloud descended on Mount Sinai, remember? Every time the cloud would descend, God would speak. All of a sudden, that same glory cloud, that's the glory cloud. The glory cloud comes down and speaks. And what does he say? This is my son. And I love him. Listen. I'm pleased with him. Listen to what he has to say. I'm convinced there are church people who go to church every day who probably would doubt even if the Lord showed up in a cloud and spoke to us. But because he did here means that he did there. We struggle in our unbelief. Why should we doubt? Because it either is all true or none of it's true. Amen? Either his glory is for real, and in that glory, miraculous things happen. I mean, in the glory of God, angels show up. In the glory of God, maybe, I don't know, maybe someday you're out there and Moses is going to show up. You think, wow, that can't happen. Really? It did here? Yeah, but that was, oh yeah. When the disciples heard this, they fell face down to the ground, terrified. Fear is the greatest tool from Satan. To get us to be afraid causes us to doubt. Doubt spoken out loud says God can't. And we, without even realizing it, we've been raised to be afraid of things. Our parents raised us to be afraid of certain things. Lightning. When my grandmother was so terrified of lightning, if it started lightning, she was like a mother hen. She got us all in the same room. And this was so funny. She'd say, "Y'all sit here on the sofa and take your feet off the ground." Like my feet could touch the ground anywhere. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I've never had that problem sitting on the sofa, you know. So help me, we bought the sofa we did at our house because my feet touched the ground. I said, I'm getting a sofa. Why? Because my feet touch the ground. You know, I go to people's sofa and I sit back and my feet are sticking up. And I'm like, hey, it's Mary, I'm here to visit with you. She'd get us together, man, that lightning, and she'd just get us all close. And ever since then, I mean, as I grew up, now every time I hear a big boom and lightning, I want to go sit on the sofa. You know, it's crazy the things that we're taught. Don't eat this, don't touch that, ooh, don't do that. My grandmother had, when she lived in the country, right next to her house. She had about 10 acres, but right next to her house, they had cattle, and there was a bull. And every summer, all the cousins went and stayed there. There was about 6 or 7 of us. We stayed there. And every year as we got older, we'd beg somebody to run across the pasture where the bull was. You know what I'm saying? You do it, no, I do it, no, you do it, no, you do it, you do it, no, you do it, you know. So one year, I was 8, 9 maybe, I said, I'm going to do it. And they said, okay, go ahead. And so I stepped through the barbed wire, got through the barbed wire, and I would run to the other side. 50 yards maybe, you know, and the bull's like 3 miles away on a hill, looking down at us like. So to make it interesting, they said, here, you got to wear this red flag in your pocket. Now, see, I didn't know bulls were colorblind, so what did I know? Okay, you got to wave it, okay. So I took off. When I took off, I looked back over my shoulder, they were gone. They were all running back to the house. We know why Barry got killed. I said, where'd y'all go? We said, ooh, did you tell? I said, we a bunch of rats, you know. But here's the thing I didn't think about. When I got over on the other side, you got to come back. And that's the way it is with our fears. Sometimes we get over on the other side of our fears, but then we run back. The bull never moved. Come to find out later that the bull wasn't a bull at all. It was a steer. And he didn't care. Sometimes we'll find in our life that the very thing that we are afraid of is not the thing that is what we should be afraid of. It is the fear that takes us to that place. The singer of God. And see, they were raised and taught that God is going to kill you if you ever see him or talk to him. If he ever speaks to you. That's what the Jewish mindset was, that he will kill you. So they hit the dirt. They were terrified. They went face down. I think I'd probably be pretty scared too, wouldn't you? I mean, at least have my attention. This voice come booming out of them. You know, they read the stories. They'd known about the cloud. They just saw Moses and Elijah, and all of a sudden, boom, there he is. God speaking. Now, I know most of us like to think we'd be standing there going, hey, God, how you doing? But I don't think it would be that way at all. You know? But our fears come in. Jesus came and touched them. I would have loved to have seen that. I think they levitated when he touched them. You know, hey, how are they going to jump? I'd have jumped out of my skin. You know what I'm saying? He says, get up. He said, don't be afraid. When they looked up, they saw no one except Jesus. As they were coming down the mountain, Jesus instructed them, don't tell anyone what you have seen until the Son of Man has been raised from the dead. Now, in this dialogue, not here, but... Oh, I'm sorry. Let's skip the part. Verse 4. Peter, before this cloud had descended, said, Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, I will put 3 shelters. One for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. I skipped that part, I'm sorry. When the Feast of Tabernacle came every year, the Jews would leave their house and they would build these lean-tos, they'd build these shelters, and for the whole week of the Feast of Tabernacles, they would stay in the shelters, not in their home. And it was symbolic of the wilderness wandering. And so they probably still went in the house, but you know what I'm saying, they were out in shelters. And Peter comes up with this great idea. He says, let's build 3 tabernacles, is what he calls them. But he says 3 shelters. Let's build them and we'll just stay here and worship all the time. And then the lightning and the cloud, and then Jesus said, get up. And he said, he's the only one standing. Just him. And Jesus warns him, hey, don't tell anybody this happened until I've been raised. disciples asked him, "Why then do the teachers of the law say that Elijah must come first?" This was the question Ross was asking. See, remember, we know the story of Elijah. Elijah was taken to heaven in a whirlwind. He didn't taste death. And so out of the Jewish tradition was, and some prophecy, I won't get into that, but he said that Elijah will return before the great day of the Lord. He will return. And Jesus replied, "To be sure, Elijah comes and will restore all things. But I tell you, Elijah has already come. And they did not recognize him, but have done to him everything they wish. In the same way, the Son of Man is going to suffer at their hands." Then the disciples understood that he was talking to them about John the Baptist.